Hello, my name is Mary Murphy, and I'm just going to run you through some pretty low tech and low cost ways of creating a little bit of video content for your students. The setup that I'm using here privileges these two cameras. So this area here where my hands are waving, that is set up to do a demonstration for students. So in this case, I have a few little tools here that I use quite frequently in stop motion demonstrations. The second camera is set up just a little bit above this one, and that would be this camera here. And this is just to be able to walk you through some of the options if you were trying to set yourself up to shoot in this way. Apologies for the really awful lighting, but I'm working in a staff office and I've had to set up the lighting to privilege these two cameras. So the result is that I'm massively overexposed on this side because I'm right beside a bright window and I can't really adjust the lighting. That's our first real priority, is if you are producing any kind of content for your students using whatever recording equipment you've got, you need to know your way around your exposure settings and your autofocus on your camera. We're going to really today focus on using just your smartphone. So everybody's in control of their own phone, and if you haven't had a chance to figure out where your camera settings are, there are a million really good videos out there if you Google setting the exposure on and then put in your particular brand of smartphone. You could just as easily be doing this particular activity using one of these. So this is an iPod Touch, and these are about £150. I work within a TEL team in ACE, and we have a couple of these that are particularly aimed at loaning out to staff members who are TEL curious and getting them to just play around and get comfortable and confident. Because it's an iPod, there is no phone function, and these are set to your UE login and password, so they're very secure. And it's also worth noting that there are two different sizes. So when we start to look at the grip equipment and different ways of supporting your camera, just be aware that everything I show you will work equally well on each of these. So if we start with our sort of pretend student session, quite often I run this as an intro to puppet making. If I put these here, you can line up off camera whatever it is that you're going to be using. Now obviously this is quite a small space here, but I've done this on a large table and I've just had my camera a little bit higher up, a little bit further back. So I know that my active area for my student demonstration is here, and I can just leave things off camera. So I can bring in objects and I can talk students through whatever aspect is key to that session. And just like I would with a visualizer. And what I particularly like about this setup is that it really privileges very close up, very detailed work, and that's a lot of my job within the Bristol School of Animation. So I teach stop motion puppet making, among other things, and quite often you're demonstrating very, very fine detail, very close up work. So you're bringing the work right to the student by filming in this way. Now I'm currently recording the audio through something called a Yeti microphone, which is a USB microphone, and this camera here, this particular one, is Panopto, just because I wanted to flip this into Panopto. It makes it a little more agile for me to share amongst staff teams. But a Yeti microphone is sort of top of the range in terms of the low end, low cost stuff. So it's probably the most expensive piece of equipment that I use, and it's £80, but it's well worth the investment. It's USB, it works equally well with a Mac and a PC. It's instant. The second you plug it in, it becomes available in Panopto or Premiere or whatever, Audition, whatever you're doing voice recording or editing in. and it works really, really well with Panopto. So even for complete beginners, if they know where a USB port is, you can get your Yeti microphone in and working. I don't want to show you the Yeti because I'd have to take it off the stand and I'm using it to record, but I'm going to show you the next level down. So this particular microphone, I'm just going to move the sort of teaching stuff out of the way here for the moment. Just place that back there. So the microphone that you may well want to use is something a little bit like this. Now this is available on Amazon. There's a load of different types of condenser mics. This one is about £25. This one comes with its own little pop shield. Now a pop shield is really important. I'm just going to lift it up so you can see it here, and it stops your breath hitting the microphone so you don't get those popping noises. Generally speaking, you'd have the microphone set far enough back that that's not so much of an issue, but it's useful to have. If you don't want it, it's actually quite easy to just remove it. But for your £25, what you also get is a nice little stand, and that just makes it really nice and easy. If I hold it up to this camera here, you can see it's nice and portable and small. Most importantly, at the other end of this, we have, I'm just going to bring it to this camera just so that we can see, here we go. We have the connector that goes directly into my phone. So when this is plugged into my phone and switched on, I've got a really nice controlled audio studio. So again, really small and portable, working with your phone, that's really handy. And to set up the cameras where they are, you can use a range of different options. Now at its most basic, I have gaffer taped my phone to the underside of a stool with the camera bit sticking out. So you can improvise, you can find ways of working. But for very little investment, you can get this type of object. So this is it's a GorillaPod-esque. GorillaPod is a brand name, but the idea is that these are flexible, and this material is quite soft. So this grips really nicely onto objects. So if you had, say, a radiator pipe or even the back of a chair, and you wanted to train your phone to record a larger space, this is a great bit of equipment to have. And these little camera mounts at the top are great as well. So this is a little spring-loaded mechanism, and that's my smaller profile phone. And you can see that that's, I hold that up there, we've got our phone on the iPod tripod, and that's really secure, and you can lock it all off and tighten it. And I'm just going to put my own phone, which is the bigger profile, and it's also in a case. So if I just on this camera, actually no, I'll do it on this camera here. See that that's in there, and that's quite secure as well. So that's a really handy little investment. And again, they range in price, so you can get them as cheaply as £6 or £7. The higher up you go, the longer they last, and usually the better the grip ability is on them. For this particular tutorial, this camera here and this camera here are both on one of these. So I'm just going to show you the top of this. This is a copy stand, and it's got a little extender piece here, so I can actually extend it, and it has a little camera mount quite similar to the one we just looked at, with a little ball and socket in here. Actually, if I bring this to this camera, you can see it a little bit better. So there's a little ball and socket there that I can use to lock off that, and there's a little tighten nut here, and this will take, again, a couple of different sizes of phone. It's a little spring action, but if I wanted to shoot with the phone pointing down, I can move this to get the phone pointing downwards. If I wanted to shoot across, I can shoot with the phone pointing across. The other end of this, it's a bit hard to see on this camera, but I'll do my best, is a folding stand. So this will stand upright. And actually, if I bring it to this camera here, you can see it a little bit better. So the idea is that that can sit on a table. I have my little adjusting stand. I have my little rotating head on the top. But I also, oops, daisy, I also have a little nut here that can actually set that at an angle. So for about 25, 30 pounds, this is a very small, lightweight little copy stand that can be used in lots and lots of different ways, and it's a really good investment. So far I could have all of this equipment in one small bag that I could carry quite easily. So that's quite critical to this way of working, is that there's no big equipment booking or 2-day studio setup or anything that requires an awful lot of specialist tech support. These are low cost, low tech things that you can get your head around over an hour or two of messing around. The other nice thing about them is because they are cheap and cheerful, if they break, it's not the end of the world. So it's a really good entry-level way of working with staff. Coming back to my two cameras here, it's worth just talking about lighting. So as I said, the lighting at the moment, and I've deliberately left the lighting really bad on the Panopto, just to demonstrate the difference when the lighting is been considered. So at the moment, the sun is streaming in through some blinds in my office, and it's whiting out this side of my face. But I've balanced my cameras here, and I've set my autofocus and my exposure to manual, which means that as the light changes in the room, they don't change. And in order to get the nice quality that you can see here, what I've done is I've put a light ring very close to where I'm shooting. So this particular area here, again, if I bring in some quite detailed objects, you can see those quite clearly, and out here quite clearly and quite nicely you can see exactly what I'm doing. That light is similar to this one. Now again, it's a bit tricky to demonstrate in the space I have, but if I lay this here, this is what we'd call a selfie ring, so you might need to look that up if you're looking on Amazon or online. And this is a kind of double gooseneck. This little option here will take your camera or your phone, and this is a light. This particular one has a spring mounted, I don't know if you can see that, there we go, has a little spring mounted clamp, so that could be put onto a edge of a desk or a shelf. You can clamp to anything. And I'm just going to plug it in. Now I'm not too close to a lot of plugs, and all my plugs are being used, so I'm just going to bring in a little power bank. These are really handy to have in your bag as well, because a lot of the USB stuff can charge from these. So I've just plugged it in, and on the cable, on the cable you'll see, if I bring it under this camera, I want you to be able to see it how it works. We have on off, so if I hit the on switch, woo, crazy, and that you can see that the lighting has gone even worse on the main Panopto camera. These selfie rings cost about 25-30 pounds, but one of the really nice features is that we have in this little center section here, this button will change the temperature. So I know it's a bit hard to see there because it's shining straight in your face, but that's a temperature color tone selector there. But also we have a plus and a minus here, and what that does is it will let me take the intensity down. And again, a dimmable light, something that you can dim and control, is really, really important. So I'm just going to show you what happens. I've got exactly the same type of light here, so I'm just going to give it a wiggle so you can see. That light there is the same light, but it's on a stand rather than a clamp, so this one is just standing up on the table. And if I take my little selector now and I go through the selection, I've got, that's quite a cool, that's a much warmer tone, and that's a very warm tone. So depending on the lighting in the room, depending on the effect you want to create, and again, I can go down and have it quite dark, I can go up and take it right up to the top. So I'm going to leave it on the top, and I'm going to leave it on the cooler tone. There we go. So that's my selfie ring. Also worth looking at are these sorts of lights. So this is a USB charged light. So on this side here, you can see, if you can see in the light, there we go. It's fully charged. So this has just been charged using the cable that comes with the light, either into the mains or into a power bank. And the really nice thing about these, first of all, if I just move out to here, is that they're, just want to turn it off for a second. You can actually adjust them in lots of different ways. So if I hold it up here, you can see it's a little Z shape. I'm trying to find a spot, there we go. And you can have it quite small footprint. You can have it quite high and it falls down to nothing. But really nice is that when you turn them on, the top end has a dimmer. So I can also control the level of light. And see, as soon as I bring this light in, the lighting on my face changes. So this is why lighting is really important. That it's not about more or less light, but just controlling, and how you control the light will allow your camera to behave a little bit better. And these are so light and so portable that they're really, really handy to have. So that's lighting. And I'm almost finished, but I just want to talk about probably the most important thing for me when I'm setting up these studios, and that's gaffer tape. It is worth having a good roll of good gaffer tape, preferably with your name written on the inside, or keep it really, really close to your heart at all times. The better quality, the tape that has a kind of cloth feel, has two real advantages. And the first is that it just rips. So when your hands are full of kit and you're trying to sort out and organize something, you can just rip it off really easily. The second one is that it will stick really, really well, but it will not leave residue. Unless you leave it there for months and months and months, it doesn't tend to leave a residue. So if you're using your office space, your desk space, or student studio space, you can tape everything down, get everything in place, and then as soon as you're done, you can just rip the tape up and put it in the bin. So that's a really incredibly useful thing to have.